All right, Mountaineer Nation, it is week 10. Let's get underway. Our beloved West Virginia Mountaineers, who are 2-6 overall, unfortunately 0-5 in conference play, are on the road facing the number 22 team in the country, the Houston Cougars of all programs. 7-1 overall, 4-1 in Big 12 play from Tedesco Stadium, noon Eastern time kickoff, so 11 a.m. Central. On FS1, if you're watching this on TV, the betting odds for this game, according to ESPN Bet, Houston opened as a 15.5 point favorites, and that number continues to drop. Saw 14.5 earlier this week, now down to 12.5. With an over/under also dropping down to 48.5. Excuse me. The ESPN matchup predictor still doesn't like this one for West Virginia. A 19% odds for West Virginia to win this game. So as usual, we're gonna have the matchup history. We're gonna talk about the injury situation, weather and its impact potentially on the game. What to watch for when Houston has the ball, what to watch for when West Virginia has the ball, special teams breakdown, 3 keys to victory, get you out with a prediction, and I'm excited for this one because I think I got a lot of good stuff for you all and hopefully can break this one down accurately. So if you like this video or you like me and want to help support the cause, please hit that like button, please. The thumbs up so that more Mountaineer fans can see this across YouTube. Love to have you a subscriber to my channel if you aren't already. And always tell your friend, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. So let's get into it. The matchup history can only talk about one game. West Virginia's 0-1 against Houston in a game we all remember. Unfortunately, 2023 in Houston, Texas, West Virginia lost 41-39. West Virginia battled back from an 11-point fourth quarter deficit to take the lead 39-35 with 7 seconds left in regulation, only to lose on a last-second Hail Mary from Houston quarterback Donovan Smith to wide receiver Stephon Johnson Jr., who's still on the team, by the way. After hitting off safety Hershey McLaurin's hands while being defended by Anthony Wilson, and safety Marcus Floyd made one last stabbing attempt at the ball, and Houston walked off victorious. Still a game that haunts me to this day. I'll never live it down, unfortunately, that if quarterback Garrett Green was not called for a personal foul for taking his helmet off in celebration on the what was supposed to be game-winning touchdown pass to wide receiver Hudson Clement, Houston would have never even had an opportunity to throw that Hail Mary pass because it gave Houston 15 yards worth of pivotal field position on the kickoff. But just another example, in my opinion, of the curse of Bobby Bowden upon West Virginia. So moving on, what's on the line for both teams? This is always, I feel like, a hot segment. Houston, currently sitting tied for third in the Big 12 standings and is enjoying its first week in the AP national ranking since week 2 of 2022. Cincinnati has a big matchup this week at Utah, nationally ranked contest. I think ESPN Game Day is going to be there. Texas Tech is at, or it's Big Noon Kickoff, one of the two. Texas Tech is at Kansas State, and I think a sneaky matchup in which the Wildcats are really playing good football recently. Blew out Kansas on the road in the Sunflower State Showdown last week. BYU's off. So depending upon how this week goes, Houston could be in a very nice place in the final home stretch of the regular season. A little context, though, behind Houston's 7-1 record. Houston has benefited from what I would consider a pretty soft schedule. Playing Stephen F. Austin, yes, that basketball team with Thomas Walkup actually has a football team, didn't know that. Rice and Oregon State in the non-conference play. And in Big 12 play, they've beaten up on Colorado, Oklahoma State, Arizona. Then last week went on the road and really stifled an Arizona State team that was coming off a high of beating number 7 Texas Tech. And then Houston did that on the road, so that's why they're now in the national rankings. So now they have a ranked win, albeit against a Jordan Tyson-less Arizona State, who also quarterback Sam Levitt was in and out of last week's game because of an injury and is now out this week at Iowa State. I'm still circling Houston's matchup against TCU in 2 weeks, but for now, the Cougars are in the mix for a Big 12 championship game appearance. So about the team that we care about, West Virginia. With any loss moving forward, West Virginia misses out on bowl eligibility for this season, which may don't know, actually be a blessing in disguise for this coaching and recruiting staff to be solely fixated on making determinations and retention and hitting the recruiting trail guns blazing as soon as possible. On one hand, big picture, this game provides another opportunity, as I've been saying now, it feels like for a couple of weeks, since it feels like this season's gone kind of south, for the guys who have eligibility for 2026 with this team to really just show their skills, get better individually. Quarterback Scotty Fox, running back Dior Hubbard, tight end Ryan Ward, wide receivers Cam Vaughn and Rodney Gallagher. On the other hand, I want to freaking win, y'all. I want to see West Virginia win. I'm tired. I know I preach patience, and I know keep a level head because, I'm watching a lot of college football, as I do every single year, and I want to see West Virginia win. I know they've played a really tough schedule, and some teams have kind of peaked at times in which, man, you wish they really weren't, like Ohio week 2, or who did they start? Kansas whenever West Virginia played them. But man, and I know they've dealt with so many freaking injuries. And I know they've brought in all of these new transfer portal players and, a few high school recruits and this and that. But I'm just waiting for the turnaround moment. And if it doesn't come this year, then so be it. Then I'll continue to be patient. I'll continue to bring preview and recap shows, and we'll talk recruiting and all of that jazz. But just know, personally, me, Carson, as the West Virginia fan, and I hope that I can be almost kind of that's why I always try and say, a representative of the fan perspective, because that's what I am, and I'm always looking out for Mountaineer Nation, because I'm one of you, is I want to see West Virginia freaking win. They need to get this win. I'm looking back at Jacksonville State 2023, they were 9-4, started 5-1, and then they finished 3-3, but won the New Orleans Bowl in overtime against UL Lafayette. So that's an incomparable kind of season. I think everybody, when the hire would happen with Rich Rodriguez, was focused on the turnaround that happened in 2024, but they did have a good 2023 season. So that's where it wasn't it was a build at Jacksonville State. He came in, had pretty decent success year 1. Year 2, Jacksonville State started 0-3, then ripped off 8 straight wins, knew that they were going to be playing Western Kentucky in their conference championship game a week later, so kind of took the last game of the regular season easy. Then they, during that 8-game win streak, the big win nationally that was talked about was Jack State beating Liberty on the road October 30th. That was huge for Jacksonville State. They, of course, get to the Conference USA Championship game, and they shred Western Kentucky 52-12. That was right before, and that was right when the rumors were really swirling that Rodriguez was going to be the leading candidate to replace Neil Brown, who by that point in time was fired. So for West Virginia, and the way I'm looking at, how injuries and seasons are kind of turning, from good or promising to kind of or, expectations kind of change, for realistic expectations change for some teams. Some teams show to be contenders. Some now they're just kind of thinking can we get into 8-4 or something like that and call it a good season? So I would really say they're, this is a guy who, again, 2 weeks ago said, I felt like there was no hope for 2025 after that UCF game. But I also don't think, I guess 2 things can be true at once here. I don't think that there's an unwinnable schedule left on the game on the schedule. So let's not double negative, Carson. I think every game there is a chance for West Virginia to win. That's what I mean to say. Can Coach Rodriguez ultimately give Mountaineer Nation some hope? By, hey, you showed some improvement last week against TCU. That's not what I was meaning. I think it was kind of misconstrued for the 100 or so views that I got on that. I know when West Virginia loses, people on watching my videos, I've seen it, I've witnessed it. I don't really want to listen to an analysis or recap. I saw it myself. So fair, totally understand. You do what you do want to do with your time. If then you watch my preview videos to expect what to expect on Saturday, on the I understand watching the preview videos, not watching the recaps. Totally get that. But I think that's where maybe my analysis and recap of that TCU game maybe got misconstrued. Was I totally acknowledged the improvement. I appreciated that. I liked it. It's just ultimately it's a results-based business. I feel like even for us fans, like I want to win. It's a different thing than like, okay, if you go out and shoot around golf at play 18 holes and you shoot a 90, and then the next time you play and you shoot an 85, and you can actually see legit improvement even though you're just kind of internally competing against yourself. And that's what we as like content creators and even the coaching staff have said, is like they want to see improvement, internal improvement from the team. But at the end of the day, when final whistle blows and we're waking up on Sunday morning, I would like that West Virginia recorded a W in the record book on Saturday. That I don't care really. Like, you can stink, but win, and I'm happier than playing the greatest game you ever played and lost. Like that's really where I kind of come down on it. But yes, and that was, I think I heard moral victories from every single person who makes West Virginia football content in the last week or so. And you don't want to live on moral victories and yada yada yada. And that's exactly how I kind of came down on it too in the preview about the TCU game. So I totally do acknowledge there were some strides that were made in that TCU game, but you didn't win. So that's where I'm just a little bit upset, and I want to see West Virginia win a game moving forward. So weather alert, high of 76 and partly cloudy. Weather will not make an impact on this game whatsoever. Injury situation, I'm going based off Wednesday night's injury report. So it's kind of just too late. These injury reports, availability reports, get released way too late in the evening. So that and then, again on Friday, and then things change before the game on Saturday. So I'm appreciative they are. So we know who most of the people who are out for West Virginia. Nico Marchiol, Jalen Henderson, Jakeem White, Ty Edwards, Jaden Bray, Cooper Young, Julian Horton, Ashton Woods. The new one on this list who was listed as doubtful Wednesday night was guard Kimo Makaneole. So he did make an appearance in last week's game. It was Donovan Haslam replacing Walter Young-Bear. So does Haslam move over a position if Makaneole can't go and Young-Bear's backed into the lineup? How they work in the guards? Or Carson Lee going to come in and leave Walter Young-Bear on the bench and put Lee next to Landon Livingston? Interesting to follow that one. Other two new players on the availability report. Preston Fox back to questionable at wide receiver, and then also Malik Agbo, who got the start last week and really did well at right tackle. Probable, Khalil Wilkins has been upgraded from being questionable for most of last week, and I guess was like an emergency third-string quarterback, and now a new one wide receiver, Justin Brown, also listed as probable. So off the availability report from last week to this week that I like to see, Hammond Russell, namely. So I think we'll see him at nose tackle. Tykees Crawford at right tackle. We'll see if, depending upon if Agbo can go, will Crawford get back into the starting lineup, or will it be someone else? And also wide receiver Christian Hamilton. I kind of want to see what he can do to get some opportunity. I like the wide receivers play last week for West Virginia, but Hamilton's a guy who's got extra eligibility for next season. So, for a guy like a Justin Smith-Brown, who doesn't, this is the time of the year where you kind of got to see some game reps, I feel like, from those players who you're just wondering, are they worth keeping around for 2026? So for Houston's injuries, out Devin Williams, wide receiver, Jayshon Ridgely, and defensive lineman Quindara Lee, all of them are now in the 2 deep, so not a big impact. Where there is a little bit of an impact is doubtful is offensive lineman Jason Brooks Jr. He's their starting left guard. TCU also was missing their starting left guard last week, coincidentally. He's doubtful. Questionable. Here's a player. I thought I remembered this name. Running back Stacy Sneed in 2023. Sneed had that 58-yard run down the sideline on a jet sweep midway through the third quarter, setting up a tight end drive for Houston. It was part of an 100 yard day between rushing and returning yardage for Houston. So Snead, if he can't play, good riddance. I hope he doesn't. But if he does get in there, I hope West Virginia is able to enact some revenge on him. So other than that, that's all the injuries that are listed for Houston. Really healthy squad. So what to watch for when the Cougars have the ball, talking about the West Virginia defense versus the Houston offense. West Virginia's defense comes into this one now down to 30 points per game allowed. That's tied for 103 in FBS. Down to 407 yards per game allowed. That's 104 in FBS. Houston's offense, 29 points per game, tied for 69th in FBS, and 381 yards per game. That's 72nd in FBS. So, second-year offensive coordinator Slade Nagel previously ran Coach Willie Fritz's off-spread offenses at Tulane before spending time at LSU as tight ends and special teams coach. The first player who sticks out to me when I watch any tape on Houston, oh my, and I'm not the first person to report on this, but whoa, number 9 senior tight end Tanner Koziol, 6'7", 250, transfer from Ball State. So this is where, I'm not going to, I don't want to go on a tangent here, but there are other programs out there who are getting transfers from the G5 level and below and are making them work on a team. So I'm just going to kind of put a pin in that for my postseason recap, depending upon how the rest of the season goes out. But just know I'm keeping my eye on these other programs who bring up players from the G6 level, and I'm keeping my eye on, do they show improve, are they standouts for their new teams, and whereas West Virginia compares to them. So for Koziol, 43 receptions, 450 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's the nation's leader in receiving yards by a tight end, coming off arguably his best game of the season. 7 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown. Just a huge dude. Incredible hands, body control, coordination. He's got everything you look for in a tight end, it feels like. I think he's going to be a really matchup problem for West Virginia. Is it Reed Carrico who tries to cover him? Can he run with Koziol? Or is Fred Perry big enough to guard him in pass coverage? Kind of West Virginia's got some tweeners. You go with a faster and better, pass coverage skills in a Perry, or do you try and, with a bigger body guy like Reed Carrico, who has some speed, or maybe it's Chase Wilson. I'm just wondering how West Virginia decides to play him. Is it more zone? Is he able to work in zone coverage, or do you kind of man him up? That's what I'm watching for number 9. He is a lethal weapon for the Cougars. Number 1, redshirt junior quarterback Connor Wegman. Let's talk about the quarterback transfer from Texas A&M. He was the number 1 quarterback in the high school class of 2022 and put together a freshman All-American senior season that year. Freshman season. Started the first 4 games of the 2023 season before suffering a season-ending foot injury against Auburn. He then started the 2024 season 3-1 for the Aggies, but threw 2 picks against Notre Dame and Mississippi State, respectively. Marcel Reed led Texas A&M to victory over LSU, and the rest is history. So, got a pretty solid NIL deal from Houston to be their starting quarterback. This is a Houston program that had De'Ara King and then Clayton Tune under former West Virginia and Houston head coach Dana Holgorsen, but had really settled, I feel like, with Donovan Smith, backed up by Zion Chris. So they went in on Wegman for this year, and he's got them to respectability, a program that by week 10 in the country, you're ranked and have a lot to play for still in Big 12 play. So I'd consider this a really positive move that Houston made as a program for this season. In 2025 for Wegman, averaging only 15 completions per game, but also adding 11 carries per game, 198 passing yards plus 44 rushing yards per game, with 20 total touchdowns and just 2 interceptions. So he's making a return on the investment by Houston and showing out in his redshirt junior season. West Virginia, matching up against him, can't let Weigman get his momentum going forward on the run. He's a tank with decent speed, but it takes a little bit of time to get him going, and he doesn't have the kind of elusiveness getting to the sidelines. He's outside the pocket like some of the quarterbacks West Virginia's played this year. He's a guy who wants to keep his shoulders square, wants to be running forward just like the little engine that could, and just kind of barrel through and take off. But so you might be asking yourself, how is Houston 7-1 with an offense that scores what they score and put up the kind of yards that they put up, that not top 25 in the country caliber? Here's what I dug into the numbers. They only have turned the ball over 4 times. 4 times for the entire season. That's third best in FBS and tied with only Ohio State, Cincinnati, and Auburn for best in the Power 4. They faced the 4th most third downs of any team in the land, and they convert 42% of the time. They're also 9 for 17 on 4th down. So those money downs, 3rd and 4th downs, that's where Houston is able to cash in and take advantage. We'll talk about Houston's kicker, I feel like, during the special teams segment, but I'll just tease the fact that Houston has a pretty darn good field goal kicker. And while Houston really starts out games relatively slow, relatively even with their opponents for the year, Houston is outgaining opponents 126-43 in the second and third quarters combined this season, showing they make adjustments on both sides of the ball, settle in, and take advantage. And comparatively to last year, which was still, I feel like, a pretty decent year for them, still finishing 4-8, but really came on strong in the back half of the year, that they have the mental fortitude to close games late like they did against Oregon State, Arizona, and now Arizona State. So they have that working for them, I feel like. So my first point about the West Virginia defense against against Houston's offense. Will last week's effort versus TCU galvanize the defense, or was that them completely emptying the tank, like I said, like we need them to do for this Coal Rush game last week at home on homecoming? I would still say the former. I think West Virginia held one of the nation's leading passers in check while only allowing 23 points, so that's going to give them some added confidence because they finally got an offense to support them at times in this game. So I think, okay, if the defense buys into what Scotty Fox and Coach Rodriguez are able to cook up, they feel galvanized. And some guys, getting healthy here and there. Devin Grant back to full strength. We'll see what happens with Hammond Russell entering back into the contest this week. Chase Wilson, Reed Carrico still stalwarts in the middle. Thank goodness Fred Perry didn't get knocked out on a targeting call early in the game. So the pressure rate was better than it's been in Big 12 play last week. As I mentioned, Devin Grant got a sack. The secondary, I felt like, did a really solid job of limiting all of the ancillary pass catchers besides Eric McAllister. They just needed a timely turnover that almost came on TCU's final drive. Just serendipitously, that ball fell right into his last name escapes me, his hands, and TCU was able, right time, right place, same with the onside kick, and they came away with the ball game. So 2 things really kind of came up strong for the Horned Frogs last week. So number 2, I would say selling out on stopping the quarterback run, especially in short yardage situations. Number 44, senior running back Dean Connors has taken the 13th most carries of any ball carrier in the nation so far this season, but he's just okay. Taking advantage, I feel like, of Houston's lesser competition on the schedule while underachieving against Houston's better competition. So I'd sell out, not let Weigman beat me with his legs. Try and say that 3 times fast. Don't let Weigman beat you with his legs. 98 yards with a rushing touchdown 2 weeks ago against Arizona. Then last week, 21 carries for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Sun Devils. So don't let them move the chains and gain confidence offensively by letting their quarterback punish you. You get to him before he gets going behind the line of scrimmage. Let's transition to when West Virginia has the ball. Talking about the West Virginia offense against the Houston defense. WVU, 21 points per game. That's still 113th in FBS. 353 yards per game. That's 98th in FBS. Meanwhile, Houston, here's where they stand out. Their defense gives up 19 points per game. That's tied for 21st in the nation. Yards per game, 331. That's 36th in the nation. It's a multiple 4-2-5 scheme. So I feel like against every opponent West Virginia's played so far this season, under first-year defensive coordinator Austin Armstrong, and we know that head coach Willie Fritz has his hands on the defense as well. So what I would say and most impresses me about Houston, and I really haven't watched too much of them, I would honestly say, since Willie Fritz has taken over, just kind of not as relevant last year. West Virginia obviously didn't have them on their schedule, so I wasn't doing a breakdown kind of like this like I was in 2023. So not really paying much attention to the Cougars, but now for this show, definitely did. And what impresses me most about Houston is the way that they use creative blitz packages, delayed blitzes. They have a relentless front four. Arizona State's quarterback Sam Leavitt and Jeff Sims were sacked 4 times a week ago, hurried 4 more times on the night, and at times it just seemed like Leavitt was running for his life, both sidelines, trying to make a play out there, just under duress the entire evening. And we talked about how West Virginia really struggled 2 weeks ago with UCF's Nigel Kelly on one side and Malachi Lawrence on the other when Scotty Fox got the start in Orlando. The player that you got to watch for Houston, number 90, senior defensive end Eddie Walls III, transfer from FIU, G6 program, 6'4", 250, 5.5 sacks on the season. Notably had 3 of those 5.5 last week against Arizona State, with 8 tackles for loss on the season. He's Houston's pass rushing standout. But also in the middle, a guy I really, really like, single-digit number 2, a nose tackle, senior Carlos Allen Jr., transfer from Kennesaw State, so also Conference USA program, 6'1", 295. His 52 tackles on the season are the second most on Houston's defense, but the second most by any defensive lineman in the country, behind Nick LaBarbera out of Nevada. So you heard that right here. Allen on the defensive line has the second most tackles by any defensive lineman in the country. So he's a standout. Houston averages over a forced fumble per game, 35 total pass breakups on the season. That's 11 more than West Virginia. Just a solid, hard-working, blue-collar, overachieving, ragtag kind of defense that was really Willie Fritz's calling card at Tulane, and now he's instilling it into the Houston program. And with the nation's number 2 overall quarterback in the high school class of 2026, 5-star Kayshawn Henderson, currently committed to Houston, the future looks bright for Houston to become good on both sides of the ball. Seemed like, and we knew this to be the case with Dana Holgorsen, really giving autonomy to Tony Gibson during his backstretch of his tenure in Morgantown, previously Keith Patterson. Houston was always going to be an offensive program and wasn't going to recruit really hard because that was just not Dana Holgorsen's thing. Now it seems like Houston, under Willie Fritz, wants to become a defensive program in a league that is still traditionally offensively driven. Now he's putting his nose to the grindstone on the transfer portal recruiting and high school recruiting. So good for Houston, albeit I still view Houston kind of in the same vein as I do as UCF, in that, as a G5 program coming from the American, and what did you do for me lately beyond that 1 year of getting to a BCS bowl? But now, are they able to prove it? Are they now passing West Virginia up in the pantheon of Big 12 standings? I don't know, to be determined. But this is where I'm saying they're maximizing on some of the transfer portal recruits, hitting on them, supplementing. They had a pretty decently sized transfer portal class in year 2 of Willie Fritz. So is this, kind of previewing what's to come for West Virginia next year? I don't know. So I'm really tuned in for this matchup. So about the West Virginia offensive line first and foremost, I feel like, can the offensive line continue their improvement in pass blocking? We might now, as I mentioned with the injury report, see some changes to that offensive line again with some new faces. But I would feel like beyond that, they finally, last week against TCU, gave a West Virginia quarterback decent pass protection with more time to throw. Now you have to do it on the road, which West Virginia has not been good on the road this year, against a team that perhaps has as good of a defensive line as UCF. Maybe, I thought that, and like, this is where I don't want to undersell it by Scotty Fox, because I saw that he came away with the record for passing yards in a game by a true freshman in program history. Kudos to him. Truly, I'm not holding anything back against him. I think that was a standout performance. Seems a little more mature beyond his years. Came out there against the TCU defense, who I said had standouts at all three levels on the defense. But I saw a lot of quarters, kind of back behind the line. Like, it just seemed like TCU was kind of letting. It was a very interesting game plan, I feel like, by head coach Sonny Dykes last week in that game, that they figured they could stuff the run, which they did. And if they just, let's see if this Scotty Fox can complete. Can he complete anything super downfield in West Virginia? Better, I think, than what TCU expected. And we'll give him, and hopefully he gets bored, of throwing nickel and dime routes. I looked at his QBR after that game, and I think I might have mentioned this in the post game. And he only had a 40 QBR according to ESPN. 4 against UCF, which is basically abysmal. 40 is just below average. So yes, while 300 yards, you love to have those statistics. That's a flashy stat of 300 yards. He really just took what the defense gave to him out there and made open reads, open throws, and TCU kind of let West Virginia get theirs that way, not giving up much over the top, playing good standout defense, and they got timely stops on 3rd and 4th down that they needed, and that's how it went. But from where West Virginia's been this season, bottom of the barrel, I feel like, in the country, in pass protection and moving the opposing defensive linemen in the run game, I will take that. I will still see that as improvement by this West Virginia offensive line, and you see at least what West Virginia can do from that perspective if you give Scotty Fox 2 seconds worth of freaking time after the ball is snapped. So I hope that, continue to build upon that. That was the first showing, I feel like, of life, once again, by this offense, even though you still couldn't run the ball. So I think I'm going to put a pin in that, and I'm going to come back to that in my 3 keys to victory. But you got to sustain drives. West Virginia, 3rd worst in the country on 3rd down at just 28%. And not panic or flub the call on 3rd or 4th down. I feel like Coach Rodriguez channeled his inner Coach Holgorsen a bit too much last week, it felt like, and a little too much of choosing when to go for it versus when to punt, and then the play calls that he chose on those 4th down plays. I wonder if he'd have it back. He was having none of that on the question that he got in the press conference. Yeah, I like to go for it on 4th down. Like, we're not. That's another thing. Like, I just don't understand post-game press conferences. Like, I've now seen this through 3 head coaches. Holgorsen to Neil Brown to Rodriguez. They are not in the headspace to analyze a game like we are, win or lose, right after a game. It's just not happening. To get something that is usable, I feel like, for shows like this or written recap articles, like, you just don't need it. I mean, I feel like you can write. It's nice to always have the perspective of the certain game-changing inflection points in game. This is taking me back, I feel like, to my college sports writing days for my college newspaper. Yes, you would love, in a perfect world, to have the context behind those certain inflection points within a game that's like, okay, well, why did you make the decision here? Why did you make the decision there? Both with players, too, if you have the access to talk to players, which I did in my college days. But that's just not today. I mean, and that's just not, it's such a high stress, win and you're relieved, not joyful. On the opposite side, you lose, and it's the end of the world environment in which we live in college football today. I feel like if you just save the post-game press conferences for Monday, I think that's what Neil Brown did. Now Rodriguez's are on Tuesday or one or the other. Maybe they record on Monday and post on Tuesday. That's when I feel like I've been watching them this season. But, we're not going to get that. So it's going to take people like me out there who go to say it's like, hey, maybe that 4th and 2 really was a long 1, almost 2. A tush push play with Scotty Fox on that inside your own 30-yard line was not really a great decision. I know it was a 10-point game, I think, at that point in time. I know you didn't want to feel like you were getting blown out and fall behind by 3 scores, but, and again, this is a team that's year 1, very discombobulated. Those kinds of things by veteran and more experienced teams iron themselves out, and you don't see them. You see that kind of, poor execution or missed call, I feel like, from a coaching staff who's overcoaching, who's having a lot of, I feel like, turnover in different players and understanding them, this, that, the other thing. You get where I'm going with this. So it just didn't work out. Easier, simply put there. Also, talking point that spurred up earlier in the week that I'm super intrigued by. I'm also going to have another side tangent with this. Curtis Jones at running back. Woohoo! Coach Rodriguez alluded to it on his show at Kegler's Monday night in high school for Cabell Midland High School. And yeah, I heard that once. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Cabell Midland, not Cable. In 2023, he ran for 1,762 yards, 2017. That was his senior year. As a junior, 1,584 and 19 touchdowns. Also, just over 11 seconds in the 100. So he's got speed. He's showing it on the defensive side of the ball. And at 6'4", 225, what he's accordingly listed to according to WVU Sports, why not? I mean, I just think that Dior Hubbard and Sincere Bowers just have nowhere to run to the outside and are too small with the blocking to make much of an impact running between the tackles. So if Tyler Jacklich and Clay Ash aren't better options, don't have that burst, don't have that speed that you need at the Power 4 level, let me see it from Curtis Jones. Let's try it. I just wonder if this is, an entry point for this West Virginia team having more two-way players in the future. I know Coach Rodriguez kind of spoke to this during his press conference, but I said this months ago. I said this whenever everything was kind of bubbling up about the House settlement and how that's going to impact future rosters moving forward for teams in the SEC and the Big Ten versus everybody else. And I said then and there, and I'll repeat it now for this show. I know this is a game preview, but bigger picture, NFL teams have 69 players total, and that's between your 53-man active roster and your practice squad. So you have 69 total players. Why do you need, and I know West Virginia has over this now and what's coming in the future with the House settlement, why do you need 110? In today's landscape of college football where everybody's got to be paid this and that, can you not cross-train players? I mean, they played both sides of the ball in high school. I know that you're trying to, but even just freshmen, to have guys who have done it on both sides of the ball, have them in practice working both positions to utilize. I think that for middle-class programs like West Virginia across the country that you could afford, and that's why I was asking questions about this when I was on with Kuz of Kuz's Corner a few weeks ago about the new scholarships that are coming according to Ren Baker. Can those be used in same kind of terms as NIL dollars and not necessarily just full scholarships? I mean, that's what's so odd to me. I get the whole NIL component. I truly do. But it's not only are you compensating players today with a full scholarship, so all the things that come with that, the tuition, the housing, the food, the nutrition, the working out in all of the facilities, medical care, physical therapy, everything else that comes under the sun with being a football player, now you're getting paid on top of it. Well, if you take that piece out of it, or again, if you have fewer scholarships to use but could use that, it's like product in kind, I feel like, as NIL dollars, could you get away with, instead of having 110 scholarship players on your team who, the way it's being, I feel like being spread out, of you're having more volume, less quantity, and in the future instead have less quantity of players but more quality, because or using those players to play multiple positions and compensate them as such with a higher NIL value. I know it's kind of radical. I know it's kind of new age, progressive thinking. I feel like that maybe an old school coach like Coach Rodriguez would, laugh at or whatever. But that's just kind of the way I think. Like there are now we're into week 10, so now I can say this having seen it. So guys like Logan Ramper, who very intrigued because he goes to he previously went to a Division II university. It's about an hour north or so here. My wife's younger brother now attends. What's he doing as part of this roster? 1 year eligibility guy? Is he just a practice squad guy? Let me pull up my little handy dandy roster sheet here to see. Hold on, let me get some. I can go through it right now. Of just guys that like you brought in, wanting to see what they can do. I know Cannon Katzer's been hurt. I like Noah Bram, because of the fact that he's Rich Bram's son. I don't know them personally, but know of the history of Rich Bram and what he's meant to that program. But now, a third-year player, what is he really doing for your squad at tight end? We haven't seen him up to this point in time. Could he not play linebacker, which he played in high school? Or, try him out at a separate position? Or that's what I mean, kind of forward thinking of finding these guys who, if you're not able, and I feel like, Neil Brown was a little bit on to something like this, like trying that out with Rodney Gallagher in a sense and form. Like, if you're going to be paying these players to be there, and I know how we always are, so concerned and talking about money with what's coming out of Golden Blue Enterprises and so on and so forth, is utilizing these players to maximize on the investment that you're making in them. And I just don't, like, if you're going to invest a full scholarship into them, not pay them NIL dollars, because you just don't see them making a high impact on the team, what is the point of them being there? Can that scholarship be used in different kinds of terms? Or, can West Virginia get creative and maybe not, give a full scholarship, but give an NIL number to a player that exudes what the market is, and they don't really care at the end of the day that they're then paying for part of what they're, you know what I mean? It's kind of just like how you crunch the numbers at the end of the day. And I just wonder what the perception of a full scholarship is in players' minds at the moment compared to what the NIL figure is. So I know that's gone off the rails. That's a discussion for a different day. But when I hear things like Curtis Jones playing running back for West Virginia, we should hear that more often. We should hear that more frequently. I feel like defensive backs and receivers, again, be cross-trained, linebackers and running backs, defensive and linemen and offensive linemen. So, like that's what I mean to say, to try and utilize and maximize this roster. And what I'm looking forward is the construction for next year. Can you have fewer players but higher quality rather than lesser quality but more volume? And you're trying the Johnny Majors approach to take 10 running backs to find one, when it's like, okay, well, if 10 running backs all can't make it here at the Division I Power 4 level, what is the point of taking that kind of approach? Why not find 1 or 2 running backs who can really do it, and then can cross-train some other players at other positions to come in and support here? That's what I mean to say. All right, moving on. I know we're 43 minutes in, and I've already had 2 tangents. So special teams. The only thing I really want to talk about from this one, well, there is another Australian punting situation between Ollie Straw and Liam Doherty, and both of them have really good numbers, right around the same. Doherty had a really good game last week against ASU. The kicking for Houston. Woo. Transfer from Old Dominion, again, G6 program, Ethan Sanchez, senior. 16 for 19 on the season with a long of 52. Last week only made a 26-yard field goal, but also 3 for 3 on extra points. I just think he can be a weapon for Houston, kicking at home. Again, long of 52. I think I was watching the game, which he made it. I can't remember. That was a Friday night contest for Houston. So that's really the sexy breakdown in or analysis of special teams. Not whole lot, I feel like, for both sides. So let's get the 3 keys to victory so I can get to a prediction and get you out of here before an hour. So, and we'll consult the Swami for the prediction. So 3 keys to victory. I hope now that positions have somewhat settled, namely at quarterback and running back, this offensive coaching staff has an idea of what it can do, what it can't do, and what it needs to do to sustain drives and put up points. I still don't think that this West Virginia offense is as explosive, comparatively to even the 2020, definitely not to the 2023 offense, and still not to where that 2024 offense is that underachieved, I feel like, in Garrett Green's last season in Morgantown, especially in the run game. But they may, I feel like, have found something in the quick passing game with Scotty Fox at quarterback. That's what I want to know from this game versus TCU is, was it West Virginia just taking advantage of what TCU gave you, or was it actually a really standout performance, and we're not just kind of blowing smoke, even though, again, I don't want to undersell that he is a true freshman making just his second start, got in against Pitt, I know, early in the season. So the way to help Scotty Fox, I feel like, help him out for this one, O-line block, wide receivers create separation. I think that's going to equal success in the passing game, and that's the way I feel like I see them winning this game. That's the formula to success, to score enough to win, to beat Houston, because just running into a brick wall and beating your head against the wall, insanity of doing what you have been doing in the run game, I just don't know if I see it getting better this year. But the passing game, okay, you've shown now some flashes in the pan. Is it now we can turn this on and there's something to build off with the passing game? I hope that is making sense. So I think the passing game is going to be important for this one and taking advantage. But again, Houston's got a really tough defensive line, and they're going to come after Fox on this day. Number 2, defense. Fiercely defend up the middle. Wegman on the run, I cannot overstate that. I feel like that this front seven can go toe-to-toe and kind of let, what was his name? The running back for Houston. Dean Connors, let him get his in the run game, but you can't let Wegman supplement that, because that's how he's killed the 2 Arizona schools in the back-to-back weeks. And then Koziol in the pass game, I wonder how West Virginia, I feel like he's going to try and make work in the middle, in between zone coverage, some of those soft spots that I think they're going to try and figure that out, attack between the hash marks using him, and just try and attack West Virginia downfield, in the middle, in a multitude of different ways, so trying to cover him up. And then, this was the difference, I feel like, of just one turnover for West Virginia against TCU could have been the difference. Who knows what happens if West Virginia recovers that fumble at the end and gets one more possession to try and take it down on the Horned Frogs. I feel like the motivation and the confidence that they would have going into this one. So, and maybe they still have part of that. Maybe they still have some of that motivation and confidence from last week's game, that now I know it's on the road. I know it's a noon kickoff. I know there's probably only going to be like 10,000 fans in the stands at Tedesco Stadium like it was in 2023. I don't know. Maybe now that they're ranked, maybe that's kind of inspiring the fan base. That's kind of the perception that I have of Houston, that they're just still a very small fan base in support of their football program. But West Virginia create its own energy, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and come away with a turnover and help that sparks the offense at some given period of time. Doesn't have to be at the initial onset, but would hope that it would be at some point in time in the game. So that's it. My prediction, bringing in the Swami for this one. I felt better than the Swami did this week. I was telling him about all of the different stats I found. Again, Houston's maybe played a softer schedule, really caught ASU at a down time with injury situations. They were coming off high of beating Texas Tech the week prior, and maybe just didn't take Houston as seriously as they needed to. Started out slow, were able to spark a comeback, but missed a bunch of field goals, got called for penalties that negated touchdowns. So I was telling all this to Swami, and the Swami was just unfortunately like, I want to buy into this team, but he's so invested into Mountaineer basketball at this point in time that he just kind of wants to move on to the hard court and just kind of, put this football season to bed, and then West Virginia can, move on at that point in time, that we're not talking about a bowl game. But the Swami did also say that he might feel a little bit better about next week's game at being at home against a Colorado team that's reeling right now. I think got beat by Utah 53-7. So the Swami said he's not fully giving up on the season, but he thinks that I need to calm and temper my expectations, because remember how West Virginia did against UCF a couple of weeks ago on the road. Now have yet to win a road game. They've never finished 0-6. I know that this program was independent for a good period of time, but have never fallen to 0-6 in conference play. So this would be really devastating of a loss, I feel like, for West Virginia's just historical program reputation to get to this point. So that's why I feel like they're going to really compete. They're going to want to play. They're going to play hard, and they're not wanting to play hard. They will play hard. And I think I could see this one going down to the very end, just like it did in 2023 for now different reasons. But just seeing that number, 15.5 all the way down to 12.5, there's something I feel like that Vegas is looking at that says, wait, maybe West Virginia is going to come out there and challenge and make this a game. So I unfortunately can't go with the Mountaineers. I just haven't seen enough yet, I feel like, to feel any more confident in them winning a ball game. If they continue to build upon what they did last week against TCU, and we'll see that against a pretty decent team, not great, but decent team in Houston, I might change my tune, especially at home against Colorado. But for right now, I'll go with 27-24. Houston's going to win this game. In the preseason, I thought this was when West Virginia was really be rolling and trending toward potentially getting to 8 wins. How I was so wrong. I said 30-20 on the road, but now I'm going 27-24 Houston and switching up my pick. I'm 5-3 on the season. Got RMU correct. Ohio wrong, Pitt correct, Kansas wrong, Utah correct, BYU correct, UCF wrong, TCU correct. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. If you've liked this video, now 52 minutes, please hit that like button again so more Mountaineer fans can see it on YouTube. And I'd love to have you a subscriber to my channel. And as always, the number one thing, even beyond those things, would love to hear your feedback in the comment section here on YouTube. I love engaging with you all. I really appreciate you, especially the guys who are consistent, tuning in and week out. And even if you disagree with me, I'm fine with that. I can really take the disagreement on there. You just got to give me why. That's really so that I understand where you're coming from, so then we can kind of banter back and forth. Would love to know your rationale and reasons why. So thanks for tuning in. I'll be back on Sunday to recap it, good, bad, or indifferent. Hopefully West Virginia comes through with a victory. I just need this for my soul. I feel in the same way I needed the backyard brawl for my soul. It's just like one of these next 4 games. Maybe they reward me when I go down to Tempe to see West Virginia take on Arizona State in a couple of weeks. Maybe that's how they reward me. With the last road game of the season, West Virginia comes through with a win. So thanks for tuning in. Hail West Virginia. Let's go. Spot the ball, baby.